Good day everyone, we are Group 3 and we'll be discussing the global city. But first, let me introduce myself. My name is Rochelle Luna. Okay, let's get started. First, let me introduce you to the learning outcomes. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to explain why globalization is a spatial phenomenon, identify the attributes of a global city, and analyze how cities serve as engines of globalization. I'm curious if any of you have ever considered moving to New York, Tokyo, or Sydney if given the opportunity. If you were to ask me, I would love to visit these places, especially New York. I'd like to see their most famous tourist attraction, the Statue of Liberty, as well as their tall skyscrapers. I'm sure some of you want to visit or relocate to these cities as well. Some of you have visited these cities as tourists or as temporary residents, or you may have relatives who live there, or maybe you've heard stories about these places. You might have an idea of how these cities look based on what you've seen in movies or on television. If you've seen the Avengers movie, you'll remember a scene in which the Manhattan in New York was destroyed in a battle between the Avengers and aliens. Not many people have been to global cities, but most know about them. Their influence extends even the one's imagination. What are these places? Why are they important? How are they relevant to you?
Good afternoon everyone, my name is Diana Rose Rosales and I will be discussing why study global cities. So they are clearly worth studying because cities are central places in the process of mutual influence of globalization on people. They are meeting places, communication nodes, and sites of exchange as well as locations where global processes become particularly visible and influential. From Asia to Africa, South and North America to Europe, large urban centers enjoy significant competitive advantages and serve as primary nodes in the globalized economic system. They interact with states and other international actors, pursue goals that are frequently intertwined with global economic agendas, and are crucial to questions related to climate change, mobility and migration, technological innovation, economic development, and infrastructure. So, globalization is special. This statement means two things. First is globalization is special because it occurs in physical spaces. The second one is globalization is special because what makes it move is the fact that it is based in places. So, let's talk about the first one. Globalization is special because it occurs in physical spaces. In order to attract capital, cities are being reshaped. Globalization led the development of new land uses in order to adapt to the competitive global system, which caused a transformation period of spatial structure. Example of this is a businessman buying a high-rise condominium. The second one is globalization is spatial because what makes it move is the fact that it is based in places. In other words, cities act on globalization and globalization acts on cities. So cities are the engines of globalization. They are social magnets, growing faster and faster. New York, LA, Tokyo, London are some of the well-known global cities, as it provides global competitive
advanced living, a rich economy. No? So there are some characteristics for a city to be called as a global city. Now let me introduce Saskia Sassen. She's a Dutch-American sociologist noted for analysis of globalization and international human migration. She popularized the term global city in the 1990s. So Saskia Sassen is the Robert S. Lind Professor of Sociology in Columbia University. In her book Global City that she wrote way back in 2001, she named 3 countries that fitted her idea. So these are New York, Tokyo, and London. Now, as I've said, there are characteristics that these cities have to reach. So they'll be called as a global city. So naitaas nga lista actually, very, very long. But here are some of it. First is home to major stock exchanges and indexes. Now, New York has New York Stock Exchange. London has Financial Times Stock Exchange, and Japan has Nikkei. So, in that first characteristics, all the three named cities passed. Second, they should be influential in international political affairs, well, except for Tokyo. But London, so we all know how the Great Britain led the politics way back, time immemorial. No wonder they have colonized more than 100 plus countries worldwide. And, well, they should also be home to world-renowned cultural institutions, service to a major media hub, large mass transit networks, and home to large international airports. So that are just some of the characteristics that a global city must possess. As I've said, a global city is a highly urbanized city. So, given na nga kanang global city na ay daghang opportunities dira, like trabaho, nindot nga pasweldo, and large businesses and commercial banks are residing in that city. Okay, now, why does Tokyo, New York, and London considered as global cities? It's because these countries has powerful organizations that are linked to the other parts, and many of the major corporations and multinational companies are headquartered in the cities. Well, New York is known as the Big Apple, or the city that never sleeps. So daghan din hag. It has large media coverage, broadcasting networks. Well, I guess next to New York, London, and Tokyo, San Francisco must also be part of this global city, because ang mga dagko nato nga kanang social media companies like Facebook, Twitter, and Google are actually in San Francisco. So I guess San Francisco can also be a part of this global city. But again, back to Tokyo, New York, and London. In these global cities, there is a high inequality, high cost of living. There's high competition for positions and stress, because ang kinabuhi sa global cities is fast-paced, unlike in the rural areas or countryside. Kaya ang global city manggod nakafocus sila sa work, so that the economy will rise more, no? So naa din haagid ang competition sa work. Taas kayo, maginunhanay, dapat successful ka. Of course, you are aiming for success because you are living in a global city where there is a lot of opportunities, where there's a high chance that you will reach your goals, your dreams, diba? So, high cost of living, kay example, Tokyo. Unlike in other parts of Japan, in Tokyo, mas mahal ang mga palitunon, like 2 or 3 times. Much more pricey than the other parts of Japan. So it's because it's in a global city. Tokyo is a global city. So, given na nga, dako ang kanang income din ha. So, if dako ang income, ang prices of the goods, dako. So if you are living in a city where there's a low cost low cost living, well, gamay sad ang sweldo, dinha gamay sad ang prices sa mga palitonon. So the price and the salary are directly proportional to each other. No. Now, Shanghai, Beijing, and Guangzhou, these are the financial and commercial core of mainland China. Because these cities are prosperous and rapid growing cities in the world. Na dinha ang mga dagko nga financial companies, banking companies. Of course, China is known for a business, and they are very wise. So these three cities are the main core of China, the main financial commercial core of China. In other parts of the world, say in Australia, Sydney commands the greatest proportion of capital. However, Melbourne is described as Sydney's rival global city. Well, at least these two cities are competing as to who is more serving for the title global city. Defining a global city can be difficult. One way of solving this dilemma is to go beyond the dichotomy of global and non-global, which a lot of cities in the world can be now actually called as a global cities, as we are now advancing to a much modern and advanced living.
Good day everyone, I am the first reporter for the reports of indicators of globalization. So what are the multiple attributes of the global city? The foremost characteristic is economic power. Sassen remains correct in saying that economic power largely determines which cities are global. New York may have the largest stock market in the world, but Tokyo houses the most number of corporate headquarters, around 613 company headquarters as against 217 in New York, which is its closest competitor. Economic opportunities in a global city make it attractive of talents from all across the world. Since the 1970s, many top of the IT programmers and engineers from Asia have moved to San Francisco Bay Area to become some of the key figures in Silicon Valley's technology boom. To measure the economic competitiveness of a city, the Economist Intelligence Unit has added other criteria like market size, purchasing power of citizens, size of the middle class, and potential for. Based on this criteria, tiny Singapore is considered Asia's most competitive city because of its strong market, efficient, incorruptible government, and livability. Global cities are also centers of authority. Washington, D.C. may not be as wealthy as New York, but it is the seat of America's state power. People around the world know its major landmarks: the White House, the Capitol Building, which is the Congress, the Supreme Court, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument. The cities that house major international organizations may also be considered centers of political influence. The headquarters of the United Nations is in New York, and that of the European Union is in Brussels. An influential political city near the Philippines is Jakarta, which is not just the capital of Indonesia but also the location of main association of the Southeast Asian nations, also known as ASEAN. Powerful political hubs expert influence in their own countries as well as international affairs. The European Central Bank, which oversees the euro, is based in Frankfurt. That's all. Thank you.
Sir, I'm Vincent Melrado, and here's my report. It has written at times. Finally, Boston's local newspaper is published by the world's largest city. The intellectual top is in the whole world because of school places the business. One of the cities that people like to read about is New York, which is in London, which isn't enough for teenagers, or Paris, which isn't enough for many people. Are we in America? People are moving to university, the tourists are far away. Neo-read culture has a big impact on where you go and what you do. They all want to see Harvard, but they don't know how. Because of the best English language universities in Australia, education is now Australia's third largest export, after coal and iron ore, and well ahead of tourism, which is the fourth largest, at least $19.2 billion, roughly $14 billion. Of that money came from education alone. The Australian government said in 2015, we already talked about why Los Angeles, the center of the American film industry, may be a city that is part of the world. In Denmark, the capital city is Copenhagen. This doesn't seem like a very obvious example though. It is so small that you can see the whole city on a bicycle in 30 minutes. It doesn't have a big stock market and its people aren't very different. However, Copenhagen is now thought of as one of the world's best places to eat, with its top restaurants outstripping its size as the birthplace of new Nordic cuisine. Copenhagen has started a lot of new culinary trends, like going foraging in the forest for local ingredients. In the 1980s, Manchester, England, was a city that made things, but a lot of a well-known post-punk and new music bands like Joy and Division came from the city, making it a Smith worldwide household name. Asia is also a country based on the news in Singapore. These artists are very good. It now has a lot of different groups and houses, filmmakers, art galleries, and some of the Southeast cinemas. Asia is also a cultural and TV show from the Channel 9. A Thai and a Filipino indie, it is, in fact, sometimes easier to watch it in Singapore than it is in Manila. Singapore, with its shiny buildings, is often seen as a symbol of modernity in Asia. When you think about global cities, you think about their cultural power. Think about how many songs have been written about New York, like Jay-Z and Alicia Keys, Empire State of Mind, Frank Sinatra's New York, New York, and many songs by Simon and Garfunkel. These references make you think of a possible where anything is possible, like a concrete jungle where dreams are made of. When you live in a big city, these days, you'll see that they're becoming more and more different from as long as you live in a big city. You can eat food from all over the world. There are many Turkish people living in Berlin and Tokyo, so the food there is very good. There are very few foreign residents in Manila, even though there are a lot of people moving from other countries there. Singapore, on the other hand, has a lot of foreign residents.
So hi, good day everyone, good day sir. My name is Janmi Asli Gaspi. So I am the next reporter, and for today's video, I am gonna discuss the challenges of global cities. So first and foremost, what is global cities? So global cities conjure up image of fast-paced, exciting, cosmopolitan lifestyle, but such descriptions are lacking. So we can say, that global cities also have their undersides, which they can be sites of great inequality and poverty, as well as the termidos of violence, like the broader process of globalizations, and it can be that global cities create winners or losers. So it is basically the challenges of global cities, which we can say that majority or there are major issues and problems confronting as cities today, which include those involving physical difficulties, crowding, housing, traffic, and pollution, as well as the public education and crime. So these several problems stem directly from the fact that cities involve large numbers of people living in a relatively small amount of space. In this section, I've listed some pathologies of the global cities based on the research of Chicago Council of Global Affairs. So, the first one is inequality, the second one is tourism, the third is pollution, the fourth is climate change, and the second to the last is traffic and drugs and human beings, and lastly is the stress of immigration. So these are the pathologies which this is the causes and effects. So cities can be sustainable because of their density. So as per Richard Florida notes, ecologists have found that concentrating their population to smaller areas and cities and metros decreases human encroachments of natural habitats. So one of the example for this are evasion to heat and cold, then detached so stubborn houses. So in this case, in cities with extensive public transportation system, people can tend to derive and thereby cut carbon emission. So it is a no surprise to learn that. So largely because of the city's extensive trail system. So New York have the lowest per capita carbon footprint, which is in the United States, while in Asia, it is dense global cities like Singapore and Tokyo also have relatively low capital carbon footprints, but not all cities. However, there are dense as New York or Tokyo. So some cities like Los Angeles are urban and sprawl with a massive firewires that force residents to spend money on the cars and gas. So while cities like Manila, Bangkok, and others are dense, there are lack of public transportation and government inability to regulate their or industry have made them extremely polluted. So basically, this topic addresses the challenge of identifying and reassembling the different dimensions of and perspective of globalization is an emergent global cities. So it is a main purpose to show the challenges that face as a global cities that can be understood in a more way that both enlarge of our perspective on the process of globalization, which can be illustrated on the interconnectedness of the challenges. So that's it of my report. So I will give to the floor to other reporters, which is Madel, to continue to discuss about this topic.
Another two challenges of global cities. First, more importantly, because of the sheer size of city populations across the world, it is not surprising to know that urban areas consume most of the world's energy. Cities only cover 2% of the world's landmass, but it consumes 78% of the world's energy or global energy. Therefore, if carbon emissions must be cut to prevent global warming, this massive energy consumptions in cities must be curbed. Number two, the major terror attacks of recent years have also targeted cities. Cities, especially those with global influence, are obvious targets for terrorists due to their high populations and their role as symbols of globalization that many terrorists despise. The attributes as well that make them attractive to workers and migrants make them sites of potential terrorist violence.
Hello, I'm Anna Kristen, so I'll be the last reporter. So let's proceed with the poor and the global city. So we have always said that economic globalization has led to a huge differences between people. Because of this effects are very clear in Sydney. Some big cities, especially those in Scandinavia, have found ways to reduce inequality with the help of programs run by the government. But many cities, especially those in developing countries, are places where things don't make sense. In places like Mumbai, Jakarta, Manila, so it's common to see shiny buildings next to huge slums. So this can be seen even in big wealthy cities. So African and American and immigrant families live in the poor urban enclaves at the edges of New York and San Francisco, where they are often denied chances for a better life. Slowly they are being forced to move farther away from the economic hubs of their city. As a city gets more money and richer people, real estate prices go up, forcing people to move to places that are farther away but cheaper. So urban renewal is a process of getting rid of poor people so that richer people can move in. So Aboriginal Australians who are poor and live in the cities have been hit the hardest by this. Due to gentrification, people who used to live in the public housing had more farther away from the city centers, which have more jobs, more government service, and more transportations. So in France, poor Muslim immigrants are forced out of Paris into places called Benue, where all the enclaves of people have the same ethnic group. So class is also shrinking in the most of the world's cities. So globalization creates high-paying jobs that are mostly in big cities around the world. In turn, this high earners increases the needs of unskilled workers like hotel cleaners, nannies, maids, waitress, and etc. who can meet their growing needs. So in the meantime, many middle-income jobs in manufacturing, business process outsourcing like call centers are moving to the other country. So this shrinking of the middle class in a global city has made the difference between them even bigger. So there are wealthy American investment bankers in the places like New York, who Australia are raised by the Filipino maids. So a big city with a lot of people from all over the world.
Conclusions. As mentioned in this lesson, global cities are both sites and mediums of globalization. As a result, they are material representations of the phenomenon. We see the best of globalization through them. They are places that foster exciting cultural and intellectual fusions. They are also places that generate a lot of money. However, they remain site of great inequality where global servants are global entrepreneurs.